Hello, I am Dr. Lal. Welcome to a short session on learning styles and learner needs. Um, Learners have historically been taken for granted in the pedagogic scheme of things, with his or her preferences, needs, and abilities being largely sidelined. Things have changed, thankfully, and today the centrality of the learner is at least theoretically accepted universally. The learners are no longer seen as a homogeneous unit but as a group of individuals with very dissimilar needs and learning habits who demand the keen attention of the teacher on teaching strategies. Today, we look at this specific area as part of our discussion on teaching English language effectively and meaningfully. Let's look at learner styles first and see how learners can be very heterogeneous in their learning habits. Learner styles. Learner styles means the way in which a learner learns, his preference about how he should learn something, whether he should write and practice, whether he should read over and over again, whether he should read aloud, whether he should read silently, whether he should listen to lectures. All these things form what is called part of learner styles. This is closely related to the personality of the learner. And we now know that each learner is unique and each learner perceives or constructs reality in his own unique ways. Reality is often considered to be very elusive and not definite, and people have different ways in which they try to understand what we generally call reality or what we call the world around us. It's important for teachers to frame teaching strategies to suit this wide variety of learning or learner styles. There has been many attempts to define this variety, and today we look at two of such attempts so that we'll have a general idea about what we call learning styles or learner differences. The VAK learning styles explains that there are three different kinds of learners. Some are visual, who are visually dominant learners who absorbs and retains information better when it is presented in, for example, pictures, diagrams, and charts. There are auditory learners who are auditory dominant and they prefer to listen to what is being presented. They are good listeners and they listen and learn. He or she responds to voices, for example, to when a lecture is happening or in a group discussion. Kinesthetic learners are people who prefers hands-on approach and responds well to being able to touch and feel an object or learning props that is used in the class. This is a limited way of classifying learners, but useful still. Another and more detailed way of explaining the different kinds of learner styles has been put forth by Howard Gardner in 1983, which we are all familiar with, the multiple intelligences theory. Howard Gardner says that there are 7 to 8 to 9 different kinds of intelligences. He originally came up with 7 and he added a few more later on. Multiple intelligences means that what we used to think of intelligence in human beings is not a single thing. Formerly, we used to say a person was intelligent generally if he was mathematically very clever. Intelligence would mean quick ability to learn things. a logical way of reasoning, etc. But Howard Gardner said that, or argued that, or explained that intelligence is not a monolithic thing. It has many components, and these components exist in varying degrees and combinations in people. Some people will have high verbal or linguistic ability. We all have all these intelligences in varying degrees, but Gardner explains that some people will have a dominant kind of intelligence which will govern his or her learner style. Another intelligence is musical intelligence or rhythmic intelligence, logical mathematical intelligence, visual spatial intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligences, and Gardner added naturalistic intelligence, and sometime later, quite recently, maybe 10 years or so ago, he added a few more, including existentialist intelligence. Gardner is still alive, and uh, though his multiple intelligences theories came more than 3 decades ago. So we are here concerned about the first seven intelligences, I would say. Naturalistic and the other intelligences are disputed. Even the multiple intelligences concept has been disputed, and I am using it here not because this or the former idea which is I was talking about the WAC learning styles. Neither of these are ultimate explanations. They do not give a conclusive explanation for learner styles or learner differences. I am using it here so that we English teachers or English students who are aspiring to be English teachers and teachers in general will have an idea that all students are not alike in the way they process information. We'll take a quick look at the various intelligences that Gardner talks about, the first seven. First is verbal linguistic intelligence. This is the ability to use words effectively, both orally and in writing. A felicity with words, remembering information, convincing others to help, and talking about language. Meta-linguistic skills is also part of high linguistic intelligence. Musical intelligence, which is sensitivity to rhythm, pitch, and melody. Logical mathematical intelligence, the ability to use numbers effectively and reason well. Sample skills are understanding the basic properties of numbers, principles of cause and effect, ability to predict. Well, this is about any studying any subject. I'll bring in an example from language learning. A student whose mathematical intelligence is high would prefer to have formulae and definitions when they study grammar or phonetics or any aspect of language. They would appreciate if you put things into a table, if you give them a very clear rule about things, they'll be very happy. At the same time, spatial visual learners, people who are spatially and visually intelligent, they are more sensitive to form, space, color, line, and shape. Their sample skills include ability to geographically represent visual and spatial ideas. Well, that's general explanation. In language learning, they will learn more if you present ideas in context, present ideas in using graphics, in pictures, using pictures, shapes, etc. And to a visual learner, for example, they would prefer to learn a grammatical item from context. They would perhaps, along with the verbally intelligent people, would like to learn grammatical concepts in context. intuitively rather than using a logical mathematical skill. I used to think as a teacher and teacher trainer that grammar is best learned contextually, which I still believe that grammar is to be learned contextually. It has to be through reading, listening, and then speaking and writing. But I have felt that there are learners who would want rules explained to them at times. So in a class of 30, there will be a few, maybe 6, 7 to 10, who are highly logical in the way they approach life, and they would learn better if you give them rules of grammar. So we are looking at things here which tell us that there is no definite way in which language can be taught, any aspect of language can be taught. We need to keep in mind all these different intelligences that people have. Some are have high bodily kinesthetic intelligence, which is the people who love movement, people who love to try things with their hands. These are the people who are restless in the class. It will be very difficult to make them sit somewhere and listen to long lectures. They would like to involve in activities and learn through action. Interpersonal intelligence is related to one's ability to get along well with others in society. It's the ability to understand other people's moods, feelings, motivations, intentions. Some people have great interpersonal intelligence. They have the ability to uh, work with others. They like being with others, and being alone would be difficult for them. So they would prefer to learn along with their friends. They would get together, sit and learn together. So there are people with that kind of intelligence. At the same time, there are people with high intrapersonal intelligence who like to be alone, who find being with other people a bit draining on their energy. So they work best when they are alone. They have a higher ability to understand themselves, and uh, their sample skills are understanding how one is similar or different from others, etc. Their great strength is that they work alone. But we may have a problem here because a person who is highly intrapersonal in their nature will have difficulties in future when they need to interact with people. In the classroom, we have people like that, whom we need to deal very carefully. Very often, we compel some learners, shy learners, to come to the front of the class and talk, or maybe to stand up and talk, and they find it very uncomfortable. We need to be very careful with such learners because their interpersonal skills are not very high. Their intelligence is predominantly focused on themselves. So we need to, the more you compel, the more uncomfortable that person is likely to become. But slowly, with our awareness of this aspect, slowly when we work over weeks, we'll be able to improve the interpersonal skills of such a person, intelligence of such a person, and we can always work on these different intelligences. Everybody has some level of all of these intelligences, and only thing is we need to work on it, and everybody has one or two which are predominant, and that is a very good thing. We need to address that. At the same time, it's also possible to um, develop a skill that you are weak in further, and intelligent. I'm using the word skill here, but I mean intelligence. If you are low in interpersonal intelligence, you can always improve that with the help of the teacher. And that is why the teacher's responsibility becomes so high. So, well, as I said, multiple intelligence is not a ultimate kind of explanation for people's variety in people's intelligence, but it is convenient so that we have a language with which to talk about the differences that exist among our students. So to conclude, multiple intelligences way of division of personalities or intelligences into spatial, musical, logical reasoning, interpersonal, intrapersonal, linguistic, and bodily kinesthetic. Naturalist intelligence, which came a little later, is, I personally think, it is a little forced to think of somebody having naturalist, somebody being very high in naturalist intelligence, which is my personal view. We won't discuss that further. For our purpose, it will be enough to look at the 7 intelligences. Based on the 7 learning styles, we have based on the 7 intelligences, kinds of intelligences, we can think of 7 learning styles, 7 ways in which people predominantly prefer to learn. Some are visual learners who learn through seeing, so colorful images, graphics will be good for them. Auditory, musical, or oral learners who listen and learn. So they will have no problem in listening to long lectures, while a visual learner will have problem in listening to a long lecture. Verbal intelligence, linguistically intelligent people will find language learning and learning literature to be a pleasure. Kinesthetic learners are there who love to have more movement and love to do models with their hand and learn. People who are high in logical and mathematical skill are said to have logical learning style. They like to have flow charts, they like to have balance sheets, that kind of tables, information arranged in a very logical manner, and they are excellent in picking up information that way. And we have social learners who learn working with others, and we have solitary learning style in which people sit and learn on their own. Here is a checklist. It was not prepared by me, but I thought it will be very useful. So, according to the different intelligences, there are aspects that teachers can bring into the language classroom. For the linguistically intelligent, we ask the question, have you included reading, speaking, listening, writing, spelling activities in your lesson? Logical mathematical intelligence, to cater to such students, we need to bring in logic puzzles, problem solving tasks, critical thinking activities once in a while. So whenever we plan a lesson, whenever we create a lesson plan, we need to have all this in mind so that we cater to all the different kinds of learners. Colorful pictures for visual learners, movement, role play, drama, hands-on activities for the kinesthetic learners, music, sound, intonation practice, rhythm for the musical learners, private learning time, reflection, learning diaries, etc. for the intrapersonal learners, pair work, communicative tasks, role play, group work, discussions for the interpersonal learners, and naturalistic learners, whom I am not talking about. We must remember that all these will work for all, in fact, but when we combine all these things, it will be very effective in the class, not only because it will cater to all the different kind of learners, but we will also be addressing all the intelligences, so everybody kind of develop different intelligences which they are not very strong in. Everyone has some particular learning styles, we have looked at that, and our classes need to be structured accordingly, but we should remember that everyone has a combination of learning styles. Let us not be under the impression that people have only one style. There may be a dominant style of learning with less dominant ones existing side by side. Some may use different styles in different circumstances even. So these are things we need to keep in mind. Nor are the styles fixed. One can develop ability in less dominant styles as well. If a person is low in interpersonal skills, he can always try and become better in that. Well, the challenge all these things bring forth to us related to classroom practice is how we can cater to the individual strengths of the different students in front of us with activities designed to produce the best results for each of them, but at the same time addressing our teaching to the whole class as a single dynamic entity. This is the challenge of combining our knowledge about the multiple ways in which people learn and at the same time not losing the coherence of the class as a single entity. This is our challenge to which we need to find solutions individually. What we probably need is to establish who the different students in our classes are, have a better understanding of our students, and recognize how they are different. Here I mean different in the learning styles aspect. This can be done through observation or using formal tools to measure the preferred learning styles. There are many tools based on WAC or MI or other methods to measure the preferred learning styles. As I said, I have mentioned only two WAC and MI here, but teachers are free to explore more and also adapt and devise techniques on their own to suit the particular context of their individual learners. This is more important in this post method context. So then we come to conclusions about the percentage of learners with different learning preferences. Well, this again is not must or there is no monolithic way in which this can be done. There is not even the need to do it in a structured manner, but people have done it in a structured manner, drawing conclusions like this, saying that my class has 33% people who are linguistically intelligent, 22 with logical intelligence, 28 with visual intelligence, like that. So this is convenient. You can structure your lesson plan accordingly. But I know that in our given our limitations of umpteen kinds, we may not be able to do all these things. But the knowledge of this, a general idea of this in the mind, will certainly be helpful. And we need to remember that neither WAC nor multiple intelligences is beyond criticism. They have not been totally tested and approved by, um, you know, experts in the field conclusively, nor are they ultimate ways of discovering learner differences and styles. But they are very convenient to understand clearly how different students react differently to different stimuli and how different students have different kinds of mental abilities. It's important also to bear in mind that there are many different ways of learning and that many would resist any attempt to change their preferred learning style. Well, this is a restatement that people have different ways of learning. That is, that we all have accepted that. But there is also the fact that many would resist any attempt to change their preferred learning style. So we need not try to do that. Learning styles, even learning habits like when they learn, early in the morning or late in the evening, which that's also individual choice and preference, which we need not attempt to change altogether. The whole area of learner difference is rather complex and be quite perplexing even to experienced teachers. So this is an area which we have to have an awareness of to a great extent. Maybe we should do more research on this area. But it can be perplexing if you go into details, but this knowledge should always be there. We need to be well informed about the strengths and limitations of the models we are using and adapt them judiciously. Don't think that MI or any other tool that we have is conclusive. Don't we need to resist the temptation to consider any of these to be ultimate. And to conclude, we have to assume that people have different aptitudes for different kinds of study. That's also there. With regard to language learning, the experience is often that learners with a wide variety of intellectual abilities can be highly successful language learners. So that is where the heart of the whole argument lies. As English language teachers, we are addressing learners of different needs. Some want to be advanced learners of the language, advanced users of the language. Some would want to have a moderate working knowledge of the language. But if we need to and we need to consider all these learners. But for the high performers, often it is seen that who have multiple intellectual abilities are very successful. So it's important for us to keep this also in mind and try to incorporate all kinds of activities which cater to different aspects of intelligence which we have discussed already. That is where the awareness of MI has a key role, and it becomes a teacher's responsibility to structure classes with a keen awareness of its essentially heterogeneous character. The essentially heterogeneous character of the classroom is something that we need to keep in mind. Thank you very much for listening to me, and hope to see you again at some point of time. And all the very best to you and your teaching.